Have you ever wandered into a place and it just felt wrong?
Today, we'll jump into the account of a Canadian fur trapper who stumbled on a village that vanished without a trace.
What did the fur trapper Joe Labelle stumble into in the northern Canadian wilderness that scared him so much? Let's find out.
Hi, I'm Sarah, an artist who can't stop obsessing over the unknown and the stories that create our monsters. If you catch them staring at you while you sleep, don't worry, it's just their job. Consider subscribing and hitting the bell to see any new stories I discover along this dark alien path called life.
The wilderness of Canada isn't really a place where you can survive unless you're really tough, especially during the 1930s. Joe Labelle, a fur trapper, had made friends with an Inuit group and was on his way to see him during the summer or fall months. Joe had made friends with an Inuit group near Lake Angikuni. He had frequently visited the people and decided to make another trip. As Joe pushed his canoe securely on the shore, he could see the village 100 yards in the distance. Their caribou tents, no doubt a relieving scene amongst the miles of tundra. But something changed in the trapper as he got closer to the village. Instead of a crackling fire and voices, he was met with silence. Walking through the sight, pulse racing, he could see something wasn't right. Finally, some relief. 2 dogs trotted up to welcome him. But that relief soon dissipated, as he could now see the dogs looked more like walking skeletons with fur. And still, he heard nothing from the village. Moving past this new horrifying development, he slowly made his way towards the 6 tents, still erect around the camp. Expecting perhaps the dead bodies of his friends, he pulled back the flap of one of the tents. There wasn't any dead bodies inside, struck from disease or an attack. What Labelle found was way worse. All of the personal belongings one would never want to leave behind were there. Skin coats, called parkas, boots, iron pots, and a rusty rifle indicated the age of the abandonment. Tearing back the flaps of even more tents, the scene became more ominous. A sewing needle through a piece of material, ready to be finished. And again, another rifle. The Inuit don't bury their dead. The ground is too hard. But instead, what they do is they wrap the individual in a material or a skin, and then they stack heavy stones on top so that predators don't get to the bodies. Which is why the gravesite Joe stumbled upon was so strange. The stones had been moved and the body was gone. No wreckage from a scavenger was present. Labelle stopped and he fished for the 2 dogs at his side, and then afterwards he went to a telegraphing station where he sent word for the Royal Canadian Mounted Police. As the Mounties made their journey to the village, they stopped and visited with a neighboring family. The Laurent family provided information and insight into the suspicious activity that had been happening in the region. The Laurent family had seen a bright object in the sky that quickly turned into a cylinder-like shape. As the Mounties scoured the area, everything Labelle had stated proved true, but the Mounties would uncover even more disturbing evidence something in the area was wrong. Open graves were seen, and reports indicated the stones were stacked versus strewn about. Scavengers do not stack stones. The nomadic people that lived in the area followed the caribou. So in the summers, they would have tents made of caribou hides, and in the winters, they lived in igloos. The climate was harsh, but the people had been living in the area for at least 5,000 years. Afterwards, Joe continued on his search to find clues to see what happened to his friends. When visiting several groups around the area, the only thing that they had to say was that he was probably taken by a creature called a tornasuk. Joe described the tornasuk as a man having tusks coming out from his nose. From his perspective, and those of early missionaries, the tornasuk was viewed as the Christian devil. That while we are not privy to the depths of the Inuit beliefs, a step towards a truer representation would be to note that the Inuit people not only described the spirit as powerful, but also a helping spirit that could be called on in an oracle-like manner, a mediator between God and man, with an image of a bear or a sky god who ruled over the seals and whales. Now, the RCMP reports in the past that everything was made up by an author called Frank Edwards in his book Stranger Than Science, where I found the story to begin with. In his book, he calls it The Vanishing Village in one of his chapters. So case closed, right? Except There was a newspaper article that reported on the story in 1930. The RCMP has also stated that such a population could not have existed in those areas at that time because of the harsh climate. But that's obviously not true. In fact, statements from the RCMP continue to change. Regardless of the belief, we know that the newspaper The Bee did publish this story on November 27, 1930, and that previous statements by the RCMP did admit to such a case occurring, though nothing could be concluded. In 1976, an article in Fate magazine by Dwight Wallens confirmed that Mounties did investigate the case again in January of 1931, and also admitted to discovering the uninhabited settlement, but dismissed the abandonment and closed the case. So we know that groups did live in that region. In fact, in the 1950s, a close-by settlement at Unadai Lake were forced to relocate by the Ottawa government because fur trappers had decimated the caribou population. Mysterious Universe presents an article that points out a few theories. This includes alien abduction based on the Laurent family testimony of that object in the sky, a demon attack using Labelle's information on the Inuit group's insistence that it was a Tornasuk, and also simply vanishing due to a dimensional shift that swept them away without a trace. A more sinister explanation was that this wasn't the work of some terrible creature, but humanity. There might be something that's covered up, but it's not paranormal. And that's kind of a scarier thought. Whatever you believe, paranormal or otherwise, I hope you're somewhere safe, comfy, and with friends and family. I hope you never come across the scene that Labelle did in the northern Canadian tundra, regardless of the reason why. If you're interested in any of my art, then go ahead and visit my website. I'll link it below. My Instagram is myalienartlife. Like and subscribe. Ooh, tell me about your creepy story. Put it in the comments. I'd love to know.